Welcome, strangers, to Talkumentary, a show where we watch documentaries and then get together and talk about them.
Everyone close your eyes. Now, everyone think of one small thing they are grateful for. Say it nice and slow. Feel the gratefulness. It's okay if everyone in this room is grateful for me. Now open your eyes and welcome to Talkumentary. My name's Jeff and this is Talkumentary. Today, we are joined by two of my favorite people in the world. One is more favorite than the other, but I'll let you guess who is who. I am with the one and only King James. Welcome back, James.
What's up? What's up?
And in our studio, which happens to be the basement of our house, the house I share with the lovely Niki, aka Bird, my wife-to-be. Hi, Bird.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this with us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, everyone else called in sick for this one, and Niki actually watched this with, well, not with me, but we talked about this, and then she went and watched it, and I'll let her talk about a little bit more about that, but she was very into it, and then I asked, hey, would you be willing to do this with us? And she graciously said,
Yes.
yes. So this week, what did we watch? We watched in my opinion, a very touching 96-minute documentary called Stutz.
I'm just going to start by acknowledging how odd this endeavor is. A patient making a movie about his therapist. But my life has gotten immeasurably better as a result of working with you. If it worked for me, maybe it will work for other people.
This is either the greatest documentary ever made or the worst, and it's probably both.
This was a documentary made in 2022, directed by actor Jonah Hill, and it dives into the relationship between Hill and his therapist, Dr. Phil Stutz, along with giving a glimpse into some of the tools and methods that Stutz used in his years of giving therapy. Stutz just hit Netflix this past November, so has not been up for any awards yet. However, it is getting average and above average reviews from many different critics, including RogerEbert.com and the New York Times. Stutz is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with a 100% tomato meter so far and an audience score of 97 with over 1,000 ratings already. What'd you guys think of this?
I give it a solid 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. You are jumping right to the end of the show with our ratings, but that's okay.
You asked me to give my rating.
You're right, I
I
did.
am right there with the 100% tomatoes.
Yeah,
Okay?
I actually really love that you loved this as much as you did, and I'm glad that this is the one where everyone else called in sick, because selfishly, I like having you down here with us, so thanks.
Oh.
James, what'd you think, man? First impressions before we dig into it any further, I should say.
I really liked it too. I like the normalness of the whole show. I mean, how the different take on being a therapist and how he went about it. So I really liked it.
Yeah. So this was directed by Jonah Hill, produced by Jonah Hill, Joaquin Phoenix, which was actually kind of interesting to me. I didn't realize he had anything to do with it, but big name in Hollywood. Also Chelsea Barnard, Diane Becker, Matt Dines, Allison Goodwin, Melanie Miller, and Mark Monroe. This film was a Strong Baby and Valentine production in association with Fishbowl Films and Diamond Docs, distributed and streamed on Netflix. We'll have all that information in the show notes. Let's get into it. If you have not watched Stutz yet, go and watch it before listening to this episode, or don't, because this is probably the one documentary that we've watched so far that I will likely watch more than once. So go out, watch it, or don't. Listen to this first, and then go watch it, and then watch it again, and then come listen to this again, and give us a whole bunch of listens, because, you know, we could use the traffic on our pages, and you're going to want to hear some of these things for your own well-being and for those around you, and then you can sound like a really smart, educated therapist for all of your friends that no doubt are coming to you for all the things that they should be going and seeing a therapist for. So let's talk about why we watched Stutz this week. So this was my choice. They called me the dealer for this one. So I'll talk about a little why I chose this. If you don't know this about me, and I know Niki knows this, I have a bachelor's in psychology, which means I can do absolutely nothing with my degree that makes me any kind of money or anything like that. But I do have it, which means I have an interest in psychological things, psychology, therapy, that sort of thing. I have a huge respect for it. I also have skepticism toward some of it. I don't know if that's the right word. But anyway, I thought it looked like serious, but also with Jonah Hill being involved, I thought it's got to have some comedy in it as well. And look into someone else's journey, and I thought that was appealing. So that's why we chose it. Had you guys seen or heard of or ever, heard of Phil Stutz or this documentary before we watched it for the show?
Nope.
Nope. It wasn't until we watched the show that I knew he existed and that he's a kind of famous therapist.
Is
and
he?
Author.
Really? What kind of things did you find after looking him up that was like, what is he? You say he's famous. Like, what's the?
What I found was that he is frequently used, I believe, by other celebrities. I believe Gwyneth Paltrow also gave him a shout out for his excellent therapy skills and tools.
Nice.
Goop.
Very good. What were your predictions, James, when I said, hey, we're watching this documentary called Stutz? Obviously, if you don't know who Phil Stutz is or what the documentary is about, there's not a lot to go on by just the name alone. So what did you think when I said, hey, James, you're watching Stutz on Netflix for this week's episode? You said what? You thought what?
Well,
You thought what?
Well, I thought that hey, another documentary that I haven't seen. I might have a fresh perspective on this again. So I'm going to look at it and see what's going on, and going to find out it was good just like the other ones were.
So did it turn out how you predicted, when you started watching it and you're going, oh, okay, it's about mental health and about therapy and all that? Did it turn out did it follow the script in your mind, or did it veer off at all?
It followed like the normal therapists, how they talk. It was a little bit different than that, but I found it like refreshing myself, kind of in the way of speaking, how he is plain talk. There was nothing fake about it.
Yeah.
And he just came straight out and just said what it was. And he actually had things going on as far as like not only the talk back, but he also had cue cards, which I found interesting.
Yeah.
And that was
tools,
which is a visual effect that helps even more.
Yep. And Bird, you and I have talked quite a bit over the years, but whether it's our own personal journeys or for people we know and things, about kind of some of the frustrations that go along with therapy in general. What were some of the things, and we'll get into some of the more like details about the things that he talked about in the doc, but I just mentioned the tools. What are some of the frustrations? I mean, we talked about a lot of different things with today's therapy.
Yeah. I could go down a long rabbit hole. So to nutshell, my opinion on that is just that without tools, you kind of leave people walking out of therapy with what they walked in to that room with, which is basically nothing. Kind of like he says in the documentary. You got to give someone some hope when they walk out. So I just felt like it was really refreshing to hear a therapist feel passionate about giving someone something to walk away with. It gives them a feeling of hope, because a lot of therapists are talk therapists.
Right. Talk therapy. Let's get in here and just vent to me. I have a lot of people, two of whom are sitting in this room, that I don't have to pay anything to vent to tell my issues to, and a lot of times that's, and Jonah even said it, I believe, in the documentary, where, we've got friends who are sitting there giving us advice, and we're paying somebody to give us tools. And what happens is, the opposite of what we probably need. And that's sort of, I don't know if it goes into some of the, with mental health professionals, goes into some of the burnout probably that come where, if my job probably 10 hours a day is to sit and have people unload their shit on me, I would have a trouble coming up with plenty of, I guess, good advice and tools to give myself, especially if all I was doing was listening to their issues. So a little bit about the documentary. I won't spend a whole lot of time, giving this synopsis. Basically, it's a 2022 documentary directed by Jonah Hill, chronicling the life and career of psychiatrist Dr. Phil Stutz, who happens to be Hill's therapist. In a series of conversations, Hill and his therapist delve into their life stories and mental health, their approach to therapy, and Stutz's doctor-patient relationships, specifically between he and Jonah Hill. So what we do here is kind of pick apart the documentaries, and I think we're probably going to spend a little bit more time talking about specifically some of the tools, which is why I'm glad the two of you are here with me, because I think that these are things that we can actually hopefully learn some things from. I know that when I read it, when I watched it, there's been several times throughout the last couple of weeks since I've watched it where I've actually had the pictures that come up in the documentary go through my head, and I go, oh, this is a string of pearls. It's the same size as that shit that I dealt with yesterday. It's no bigger, no smaller, and there's always going to be that turd in it, right? So this was kind of eye-opening and surprisingly helpful to me so far, in just some of the ways that I look at life.
Right. And I think it was just brilliant to use those visuals, because for anyone struggling or people with neurodivergencies, whether that's autism or ADHD or anything, they tend to connect with visuals. So it's actually brilliant that he creates those for a number of reasons.
I agree with that, because some people are audio by learning, and some people are visual by learning. And if you can get both audio and visual to work together as one, it is building a more stronger bond between the therapist and the what you call them, therapy? I don't know.
The client.
The client. They put the client. Yeah. I say something. I know we won't be talking about that, but I'm gonna jump in on
go for it.
The Shadow.
Yep.
The Shadow. I really like that one. I could say that was one that I stand out more, because I started to write down my notes and it just kept getting longer and longer and longer.
I have a lot of notes too, and I know Niki took a bunch too.
Yeah.
It was interesting to think about how you yourself don't respect yourself.
Right.
How there's things about your life that you don't want to include in your life, which is a part of you. And for you to deny that part, it's like you living a whole life half-lived.
Yeah, because I think specifically with the shadow portion, and I plan to kind of, if we have time anyway, to sort of get to each of the tools at least a little bit, but and realizing how they all play on each other and interact with each other is really helpful. And the shadow being a piece of you, the way I understood it, a version of, and what he said, a version of yourself that you want to hide from the rest of the world. So everyone has one. And Niki and I have spent time talking about this. There's nothing you can do about your shadow. It doesn't matter how hard you try, how much you try to scrub it away, how fast you run, your shadow's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's right there with you. And it's better, and you'll probably feel better if you're able to turn around and say, okay, shadow, you're not me, but you're a part of me. So let's figure out what it is that you need, that you're not feeling, and in the case of the documentary, Jonah was saying, my shadow did not feel seen, did not feel, accepted. Well, probably because he wasn't. And I think we all have that piece.
And one thing that was very interesting to me about the word shadow, we make it about ourselves, but I actually almost aligned it for victims of trauma, or when we talk about inner child work, I feel like the shadow is almost like another word for that, because it's a version of yourself you want to hide, that those times in your life where you felt inferior, rejected, those parts are always with you. So when we talk about like inner child work and recognizing that other version of you needed something that maybe the adults in your life or what have you, which trigger warning with this topic I'm talking about, but that's a version of you that still needs to be seen and still needs to be loved and heard now.
Yep. Yeah. And go ahead, James.
And how he said, I mean, if you think about like, talk to that shadow, talk to that person that, invited back into your life and make it feel better than it felt before. In other words, bring it in and become that and just be yourself.
Yeah, work on making amends with that shadow, because the shadow needs your attention.
Right.
Not anyone else's attention. The only, like for us as Jeff or as Niki or as James, we, may feel that we require other people's attention or attention from other things, be it our siblings or our spouse or our friends or our children. But the only person that our shadow needs attention from is you. You don't have to go share that with everybody. That doesn't mean you have to go broadcast your shadow to the world. So we're not going to sit here and ask each other, tell me about your shadow, so that the entire Spotify community can know what our personal shadow. No, we're not here to do that, because that shadow needs my attention and mine only. And understanding that this is not that making those amends does not equal being proud of that part of yourself or broadcasting it to anyone else. I think that was a little freeing for me to know too, that this is for me, and there are things that we can work on that involve other people, but this isn't necessarily the piece that needs anyone else's attention.
Which is kind of where they talked about the tool with that, of asking the shadow how it feels about you and how it was treated, and talking positively to that shadow. Again, it's another time of not just talk therapy, but giving you a clear tool of what to do with that shadow.
Yep. Yeah, not just acknowledging that it's there.
Yes.
But how do I tangle with it and make it not a conflict?
Exactly.
Right?
I need to think about what are the shadows in our own lives, Like I know the shadow of my life used to be the timid, don't talk to nobody. My aunts and them couldn't even give me a hug because I would shy away from all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I must have talked to my shadow a long time ago, because I ain't got that thing going on now. You know what I'm saying? Now the beast is still there.
I love your evolving even more now. Now that I know that.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
you're
a shy
a huggable
kid.
teddy bear now.
Oh, Lord.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit. James kind of jumped us ahead just a little, jumping into the shadow, but
sorry about that.
No, it's all right. The tools, those were the things that stood out to me. So we're kind of talking about standout moments, and I think we're going to probably spend more time in this episode just talking about the content of the episode. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time, talking about I guess like the life story of Phil Stutz and all that. That was an interesting piece, but to me, that wasn't the important part of this documentary. Sorry, Phil and Jonah. I don't think that really added a whole lot to this. To me, the important part was what Jonah Hill said his intention was, which was to give these tools and these methods to the world.
Right.
So in kind, I think what we will try to do with this episode is not so much focus on those parts of the documentary, but also relaying that as a chain reaction. And maybe someone listening to this will get some tools that they can use in their own lives. Yeah. So understanding that the tools are a form of action that you can use to change your inner state and do that immediately. Not necessarily a permanent change or a final cure that they were calling, but it gives you something in the moment of struggle. Now, whether it's in our own lives or the people around us, that's the piece that, in my opinion, is the most important. What can you do? Are you guys fixers? Do you want, I know the answer for Niki because we have these conversations, but when you're faced with a problem, what's your go-to reaction?
Well, my go-to reaction is find somebody that knows more about it than I do. And
I actually appreciate that answer because that's not normally what I would think an answer would be. Like, find somebody. I don't mean to cut you off, but
that's right.
And you don't have to answer this, or we can cut it out. But have you ever delved into therapy of any sort?
Yeah. I did one time therapy. It was when it's almost like when you can't handle something all at one time. Going through a big deal with my wife and everything at the time. She's my ex-wife today. And I think that was the greatest thing that ever happened in America.
What, losing your ex-wife?
Yes.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
God bless America.
God bless America. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Wise man once said, God bless America.
God bless America.
America.
But at the same time, I couldn't understand I worked 2 jobs. I worked 8 hours at one job and maybe 8 to 9 hours at the next job every day. I caught the bus, walked home, did all this stuff. You do things for your family, and you'll put your body and put yourself to the extremes for your family. Mm-hmm. And then if it's not come back, and it's just so much stuff. Then when she says she's just going to walk away, and I'm wondering why, because there's nothing happening to you. And at that time, and then next thing I know, she says, I got cancer. And I'm thinking, oh my God, now I can't handle that. And I can't handle all the other stuff. That's the weirdest thing. I can handle rejection, but her dying, I couldn't handle. So I had to go to a therapist and talk to her. And the weirdest thing the therapist said was, put all your money together and get ready to leave. I'm like, wow. Yep, that's what she told me.
Wow.
After we went through the whole class, she was kind of like Stutz.
Yeah.
Whatever, how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
She was kind of like him. She was straightforward. She just said what was on her mind. And at the time, I thought, dang, that's the wrong thing to say as a therapist.
Well, now
but
that is a tool.
Listening to this right here, she was right on.
Yeah.
She just came forward and said, this is what you need to do. Had I listened to her, I would have been better off. Mm-hmm. But I didn't pay her no attention because therapists ain't supposed to, in my mind, therapists ain't supposed to tell you what to do. They're supposed to listen to your problems.
But do you see, though, kind of the how that might be after seeing this or after more years of life experience, how that's not really what, in my opinion, I'm only speaking for myself, but that's not really what a therapist is there to do, to just listen to you. And maybe that's what some forms of therapy are. And like I said, it can be helpful to vent out some things, but we need the professionals to be the ones to at least give us, maybe don't tell me what to do because, no one, well, if you know me, I don't like necessarily being told what to do.
That's right. I do know.
But getting suggestions from someone who not only has the experience and the credentials and the training, but also has that I'm also paying a shite load of money to to help me. You know, that's the person I want the advice from.
Right.
Well, and at the beginning of the documentary, Stutz does say that he likes to start off each of his appointments asking, what do you want? To get a feel for what are you wanting out of this?
Yep.
Because there might be people who are just burnt out and they have no one safe to just listen. And maybe that is their goal. I just need someone to talk to who's safe to talk to. And you're not going to go to anyone else, you know, and that's all they need is a listening ear. And then there's people who are like, I need help figuring shit out.
Yeah.
So give me a lifeline here. You know, give me a phone a friend.
Yeah.
Something.
Be my expert and tell me, help me get out of this pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
You go to school as a therapist and you learn the brain, how it works, and everything else, and what is actually going on. So if a person is talking to you, you kind of can figure out what's going on. So use that, like he is using it, like Stutz is using it on here to help these people. Give them something to relieve what's going on, not just medicine that they want to prescribe for, you know, not a empty notebook, I'll call it, with ink lines on it and then say, thank you very much, your time is up.
Right.
You know, what the heck?
See you in a week. Make sure you bring the money with you.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll probably go back outside and you won't have no flat tires or something like that, you know, because I'm still feeling kind of crazy, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the tools. And we already talked about the shadow terminology, but some of the tools that Stutz puts forward, Stutz the documentary and Stutz the person put forward for things that you can work on. The first thing that they talk about is something called life force. He kind of speaks about it as if the first thing you can always work on, and this never stops. He put it as sort of a pyramid. I would argue that feels more in my not completely trained, but not completely untrained psychological brain. It feels more like a circle, rather than a pyramid. However, for the sake of this, he did say, imagine a pyramid. The bottom is the physical body. You can always work on your life force, right? This is something you can continuously work on. The bottom, you start at the bottom with the physical body. You work on that by getting the body moving, whether that's eating right, whether that's exercise, whether that's making sure you get enough sleep, that sort of thing. That's a piece you can work on. The middle of the pyramid is your relationship with other people. He compared that relationship as a handhold when climbing, like a mountain or something, the handhold to pull you back into life, but you have to take the initiative to actually grab onto that handhold. You can't expect other people to do that for you. That's when working on something. So if I'm feeling down in the dumps or whatever it may be, feeling overwhelmed by the world, feeling like I just can't keep on going, I can first try to get up and move, whether that's walking across the room, whether that's doing some planks, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's eating something nice, something better for me, whatever it may be. Then I can work on my relationships with the people around me. Maybe that's just asking Niki if she wants to go for a walk, or maybe that's, you know, calling James and just bullshitting with him on the phone and listening to some story that he has to tell. But reaching out and not being isolated in that way. And then the top is the relationship with yourself. He suggests using writing as kind of a way to reflect into your own unconsciousness. He says that when your life force is in good shape, everything else will fall into place. Thoughts on life force, Bird?
Can you just like feel the words wanting to bubble up out of my mouth right now?
Go ahead.
So just being completely vulnerable for anyone listening that needs to feel like someone can relate to them. I have technically, for 2 decades now been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and ADHD. The big trio.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. Woo, I get a gold medal. And you know, some trauma mixed in there makes it just a really fun party in my brain.
Right.
So I really connect with the life force, especially if you do it in whichever order and whatever you need that day.
Right.
And not necessarily in the pyramid like what Jeff was talking about.
Yeah.
Because there's some days if you're having a really down day, it's too much to connect with people. Sometimes
Right.
that's not what depression wants from you. That can feel next to impossible, and I definitely want to validate that in people.
Or getting up and
Yeah.
and doing something. I mean,
Yeah.
I myself too have dealt with depression in its own way, but to blanketly say, or to simplify it as, well, just get up and walk around and you'll start to feel better. Like, then if you've dealt with real depression, and I'm not talking about feeling sad and gloomy one day, I'm talking about the long lasting, the potentially life altering depressions.
Yep.
Sometimes you just can't do that, which is why when you and I talked earlier, Bird, about it being cyclical or circle, or, you know, it doesn't matter where you jump in the circle, just jump in if you can.
Right. And that there's going to be a day that maybe all I can handle, or maybe all you can handle, is drinking your water.
Yeah.
And taking your vitamins and taking your supplements, your medicines, whatever it might be. And maybe that's all you can really do to take care of yourself that day.
Yep.
And some days when I have less energy than others, taking care of myself looks like listening to a guided meditation, laying in bed, not moving, because we know depression takes our energy.
Yep.
So I really like the life force. There's always something you can work on, no matter how you're feeling that day. And it can take 0 energy. It can take all of your energy, depending on what.
Right. And when I say it's so simple, it's such a simple concept. It's not necessarily simple to do. I mean, if we've in any situation, whether it's depression or something else, or just a mood or something, when sometimes calling a person and saying I'm feeling not great can be the absolute hardest thing and feel like an impossibility. But maybe all it is grabbing your laptop and starting to type whatever comes out of your brain, or writing it on paper, or, you know, I can type faster than I can write. So for me, sometimes the typing is better, but however you get it out, whether it's calling your mother, if you have a good relationship with your mom, like I'm fortunate enough to have, or just, putting some headphones in and taking a walk around the lake, or jumping on your bike and going somewhere. Whatever little step it may be, it might not even be that big. And I know I don't want to start talking around circles too much, but just understanding that it might not be easy, but that is something that you can immediately work on. Not a full fix. It's not going to take the problems away, but it's something that you can go, okay, life force.
Right.
And it's enough to make someone not feel powerless.
Right.
Yes.
I do wood.
Yeah.
Wood was my outlet. And
you like wood?
I like wood. I like wood. I like to carve wood and stuff like that.
You're good at it too, man. You got to start selling it. Anyone out there needs something made out of wood?
Go to King James.
Yeah.
King James.
Yeah. Yes. I'm just kidding. But I like the people one.
Yeah.
That's me. Like I said, that was my thing, being like not be able to talk to people, not be able to go around people because I would feel some kind of way. So my thing was, people I see, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You know, I'm different from what I was.
It's so interesting to me, James. I've only known you for, I mean, it's going on 5 years now.
5 years.
Yeah. And
wow.
And
cool.
Knowing you these last 5 or so years, knowing that at any point you were a timid person or felt fear in connecting with people, I literally don't know anybody who's better at or who's easier to connect with than you.
Yes.
I don't think, I think hands down that you jump to the top of the list in my brain. So
because he is actually a teddy bear.
yeah.
They try to take my tiger title away. Don't let them
Hey,
do
bears are tough, man.
Oh yeah, bears are grizzly bears.
Lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my!
Oh
Oh,
my.
Oh my!
But I guess what I'm saying is for the sake of encouragement, well done, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you
That's something you have to break through. You know, are you still? That's nothing. Like you said, depression. It could stay in there, even though you might get over it. It's still there. Every now and then, I'll go right back to that. Like I was in the Arrested Development stage or something, but
right.
I'll go right back to that where I'll talk to somebody. They'll say, "Hey, how's it going?" And then all of a sudden, everything in my brain just shuts down to I have no idea what to say, and I get stuck, and it comes out like I'm don't know
Like
how
a
to speak
relapse
English.
or
It's like that.
yeah.
You know, and the writing thing that you guys talk about, my friends, she did journals, and I always wondered, so why do you write journals? And after this documentary,
You understand
I
that a little
understood.
better. Yeah.
Now, wow. So now I'm gonna start doing me some of those documentaries and stuff. You know,
I actually thought the same thing, that this kind of made me want to start writing in a journal
Right.
because I haven't done it in years and I kind of lost that. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's kind of like your mirror. And once you get writing, it just keeps opening up more and more.
My logical brain has always struggled with journaling because I've tried, and I know that I could probably, with work and with practice, I could probably figure out a way to tap into that side of myself. But I get into the over analytical about my own writing, and I start to want it to sound perfect, and I want it to be laid out perfectly, and for all my thoughts to make sense. And what he was saying is like, just write whatever comes out. You know, that's how you meet your own unconscious. But I've struggled with that because I start going, well, this is stupid, and I don't want to read this back. I don't. It feels silly.
right?
Not to journaling isn't silly to me, but when I do it, it feels silly to look back at what I've written and go, what is this doing for me? So I've struggled with that piece. So I don't know where that falls for me personally. That's, I guess, something I have to reflect on, is how do I work on the relationship with myself, or with my meeting my own unconscious, I guess, or reflecting on that, because I don't know that, at least at this juncture, that's a feasible thing for me.
What do you think about what you guys think about the physical one? Because I think that hits home too.
Yeah.
You know, because I've been losing that weight, and every time I lose more, the more weight I lose, the happier I get.
Yeah.
You know, when they're working out, I'm like, oh, look at these, I can fit these. Oh boy, that stomach is going down. And I was at church, and everybody was like, well, "You looking good? You looking good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking good, all puffed up. My brain is feeling good," and that helps with that depression that you got going on.
And I think one of the hardest part. Sorry to interrupt, James.
Sorry. Oh, one more thing. I'm just going to add in on the depression thing. And this is like kind of personal, but not personal. Because, I don't care, but that's nobody being free, but not caring, but understanding what to talk about when they're supposed to talk about it. But my sister lives a life of depression, but she can't see it. Every day I go home, I see my sister. She lays in that bed, and she only gets out once in a while. She doesn't cook anymore or anything like that. She will not cook all day. I get home from working the job, and I start cooking. She's standing right behind me with a spoon. I'm like, girl, what are you doing? You've been here all day for 8 hours. You ain't cook nothing. She has no answer.
And I can understand as the person walking in, and as someone who you're living with, how that can feel frustrating.
Yeah.
But my heart also breaks for her a little bit, because I know that I've been in a place where you just feel like you can't. And that's, unfortunately, I think it's habitual as well, because as soon as you fall into a cycle of not doing anything, then the harder it becomes to do those things.
Right.
So
it becomes a part of your identity, not doing things.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's just what it is for her.
And I know, and getting out of that is twice as hard as getting into it. Just like any other bad habit, you know? So let's talk about the villain of our own stories. Let's talk about part X that Stutz calls
part
it.
X, yeah.
This is, according to the doc, the judgmental part of yourself against yourself. This is the antisocial part of you, the invisible force that wants to keep you from changing and growing. It is the voice of impossibility.
And in his words in the documentary, it wants to fuck up your shit.
Yeah, it does. And on that note, I do think it's fun, in my opinion, that he is as willing to be so nonchalant with his clients. And there was an air of, I want to sit with this guy around a campfire and like drink coffee with him. You know what I mean? Like he's not making me feel, as I'm watching it, like Jonah Hill ever felt judged by him in a bad way. You know, so anyway, thank you for pointing that part out. Part X comes up periodically in each of these different things. And what did we think about part X? What stood out to us about this section? Did you guys take any notes or anything about part X? It's okay if not.
On part X, like Jeff was saying, that part X was the guy on your shoulder. That just standing right there, looking like a friend, that, like somebody's watching, like a friend stranger, should I say.
Like a frenemy.
A frenemy, yeah. I got one of those. There's nothing I can do. Everything I say is always cutting it down, always putting it out. You know, hey, I want to try. Oh, that ain't gonna work. I want to do it, but I ain't gonna work. You know, that type of thing. And this guy right here, I'm gonna step off a little bit, but this guy right here, if you listen to him long enough, you'll see that he's kind of spiritual a little bit, because he deals like he actually calls part X the devil.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I'm right on with this guy. Now, you know, we on the same line, you know.
And I liked that too, to interject just a little bit. I liked that too, that I felt like, with the exception of some of the more crude language, but to understand that he was also talking to Jonah Hill, who's kind of known for some crude humor, it felt like this is somebody who anyone would be able to connect with. Because whether you're religious or not, if you say part X he's a devil, well, whether you think of that as capital T, capital D, the devil, or a devil or a struggle, it doesn't matter. You can still connect to it.
Exactly.
Which, in my opinion, that's the type of therapy or the type of encouragement that I want, is something that can relate to me, or, you know, the 60-year-old church-going black man that's sitting across from me.
Brown man. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You are a nice shade of chocolatey brown, James.
Easy now, easy.
With that buttery voice that everyone's becoming so well acquainted with. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, and I just like how he called it the villain, and the tools are the hero.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, James, but me and Jeff are Marvel fans.
Yeah, boy.
Jeff more so. He reads the comics and everything. I just have watched the movies. Big Wanda fan personally. But I did like that we could draw that parallel with the tools. Like, okay, you've got this part of you that is always against you. I've got that too. A side of me that's like, nope, that's a bad idea. You're not going to be able to handle that.
You're not
you
good
can't
enough.
accomplish that.
You're not smart enough. You're not.
Right.
Yeah.
But the tools are the hero that's like, yes, you can. If you do these things, you are more apt to beat part X.
Yeah. And similarly, like what you were saying to, whether it's a comic book or a movie, or any story that's got a good, you know, antagonist, protagonist kind of thing. Batman is not Batman without the Joker. You can't have the hero without the villain. You can't have the success without part X. You won't be able to reap the benefits of being happy unless you have the part X that is the conflict. And that when watching this, almost made me choke up a little bit, because it was almost a revelation to think, oh my God, yeah, that's the classic storyline. That's the tale as old as time. Not to quote Beauty and the Beast, but
We like Disney around here.
yeah, but knowing that you can't get rid of part X, or at least using the thought process that you can't and really don't want to get rid of part X. I mean, you don't want to live hand in hand, because you know, that is a painful place to be. But that leads us right into the three aspects of reality that Stutz talks about that will never be gone forever.
Right.
And those are pain, uncertainty, and constant work. God, if there was a piece of this that stood out the most about in my life and understanding, like, how often as a person, I personally, and how I've seen the people that I love struggle with, I just feel like I'm worth not being in pain. I'm worth, you know, safety and constant peace and all that. And yeah, I believe we are worth that. But if we can get to a point, and I think that was what, you know, his point is, that, look, you got to understand there's going to be pain. Part X makes sure of it. There's going to be uncertainty. You're always going to have question whether you or the people you're around or whatever is good enough, is enough, is whatever. And there's always going to be work. If you get down in the dumps, if you're depressed or whatever you're struggling with, there's going to be a constant need to work on things. Did this hit you guys in the same way it did me? It felt like a punch in the gut to me in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that me and Jeff have talked about how good it would be for, like, the youth of the world right now to be told these three things, that this is the human condition. You are going to deal with pain basically on and off constantly throughout your whole life. It's, if you want to talk in a religious standpoint, it's kind of what humans were given as punishment. We don't get to live in a peaceful utopian universe. So that's pain is a constant. And if I feel like, and I don't want to go, you know, down too far of a rabbit hole, but I do feel like if the youth of the world right now were wrapped up into that mentality of these three aspects of reality they talk about, I would hope that it could have a really positive effect on kids of today. Because we hear that in a lot of the culture in kids right now, that they just don't want to feel any pain. They don't want to feel things. They don't want to have that work. They want life to be easy, and it's just not reality.
But to speak, just to kind of open this up for anyone who might be thinking about this, does that mean that we are, or that the suggestion is doom and gloom? I mean, what's
not at all.
No.
Speak to that.
My son, he's done a lot of crazy things, but if I would have seen this, I would have had a better way of explaining to him how life is.
Yeah.
Because as growing up, older people told me that's just how life is.
Right.
You
and
know,
that's
I think else.
That's, I think, what, you know, we have to make sure, at least for our own sake, we're I guess speaking to, is to say that you're constantly, that there's always going to be pain and uncertainty and constant work. How do we not live in that?
Well, I think that's kind of what Dr. Stutz was saying, is to, all these tools are to not have as much pain. It is to be able to deal with life, to feel more happiness, to, if you use these tools, life doesn't have to kick you when you're down. You might be able to turn into the Hulk, to bring back our Marvel, you know, conversation from earlier, to become the Hulk in those moments, instead of what's his name?
Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner.
Right.
You don't have to be Bruce Banner naked in the woods.
Yeah.
You can be the Hulk instead. And I think that that's the
And
point of
break
the
through it.
tools is
Yeah,
you don't have to
absolutely.
feel hopeless, that there's going to be pain throughout your life at different times.
Can I
or
just pause
uncertainty.
and say how much I love you for bringing up Marvel so often?
I love you too. You're actually the one who had me watch every movie in order.
You are welcome.
I'm kind of feeling left out. Three's a crowd, you guys. Three's a crowd. No, I'm just kidding.
James, we love you too. You know that, man.
Yeah, I agree with everything. And then add on to that is like when you know something ahead of time, it's not as bad because you're prepared a little bit better. Prepared a little bit better for a situation is better than going in blind. And that's how I see that saying helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I come in at on that. So
yeah,
driving a stick, when I first got my stick car, about 6-speed, I tore the gearbox out of that thing, and I had to pay $2,000 to get it back in.
Oh wait, was this Black Beauty when you told me that no, I didn't ride the clutch, and I said, nah, I think you might have. Is that what we're talking about?
That's that one time, you know. But I tore the clutch out of that when I first got it. But now you can't tell Mr. JLW anything. Now I can hit those gears out of gear, in gear, and everything else, and I love it.
Yeah.
But like I said, being prepared, knowing something, it's a great help in life.
Yes. And he even says in the documentary, his words exactly were, the worse the adversity, the greater the opportunity.
Right. And the Bible agrees with that too. They said, go through something. And once you go through and you come through it, you come out as pure gold.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and that's the same saying, but in a different way. Mm-hmm. You go through some stuff, and I'm stronger now than I was before going through with my ex.
Yeah.
And now I just going through anything else, I can handle it a little bit without flipping out or losing my mind now.
Yep.
I'm stronger.
Yeah. And to quote, to kind of wrap this piece up and moving on to the next, to quote A Song of Ice and Fire or A Game of Thrones, fear cuts deeper than swords, which is something that has stuck with me for a long time. The fear before you get into something is very often worse than it is when you actually get there.
Right.
So understanding that you have the tools to sort of nullify those things and to accept it, identify it, and nullify it, I believe was how it was presented. And then know that, again, the Joker's not going away.
Right.
But he's part of what makes the Batman story compelling. Mm-hmm. And that's why the victories feel so sweet.
Right.
So the next piece, anything else on part X that you guys need to
that fear thing, Jeff, real quick.
Yeah. I ain't afraid of nothing. I'm James. I'm the king.
No, this is
slay the dragon.
It's kind of cool. I was telling Jeff about this. He's like, man, if you just don't be afraid to admit that you're afraid. Just don't be afraid to admit that you're afraid. Nothing wrong with that. And then I had said, if you know about it, then why be afraid about it? Remember that?
I do.
And that's kind of what we just said. You know, it's just that knowing. I was afraid to go up in the, what they call it, the cherry picker, I'm going to call it. Shaking like I ain't called for Jesus so many times in my life. That thing was shaking and waving. I was like looking 100 feet down like, oh my God.
And then, of course, Jeff's up there shaking
the heck out of it. I'm like, man, what is wrong?
Only
to
you, buddy. At the end of the day,
he can move it all over. I had just way less. I mean, it was still there.
Yeah.
But way less. But anyway.
Yeah. So the next portion or the tool that he gave, and I forgot to mention that during the documentary they constantly are showing hand-drawn note cards.
Right.
And I thought that was a really good visual, as you mentioned earlier. Even with the shakiness of his hands, and they spoke to that too, which was nice. With him struggling with Parkinson's, it sort of did drive home hey, there's going to be struggles. This isn't going to be perfect. This isn't going to be a cure-all. There's going to still be things you're dealing with.
Right.
So each of these tools that we're talking about was introduced with a very well done graphic on screen that was, him hand drawing those things, which I really appreciated. But go ahead.
Did you notice that? That was one of my big takes too. That when they first came on, That was literally probably him writing.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that until I just put the two together. I like that because it's just straight, normal.
Yep.
You know, it speaks.
Yep. And then also hearing, going back to the shadow, that his handwriting is a big piece of his own shadow. That that Stutz is not really happy about that part of himself, his handwriting, due to his disease that he felt has stifled him in a lot of ways. So it's kind of nice toward the end, spoiler alert, when he goes after some of the things that he was maybe avoiding because he was afraid with his disease and things like that. The next piece was the string of pearls. This was sort of the idea that I'm going to do the best that I can now and then move on to and do the best that I can on the next thing, and then the next thing and the next thing, and always being the one to put the next pearl on the string. Each action, each thing, each obstacle, each win, each loss, it's all the same size pearl and has equal value in your string. That was pretty profound to me too. I kept kind of jaw dropping during this doc, because it is real easy to think of the struggles and the wins and losses in life as a lot of very differently sized and differently weighted beads on the string. That was inspiring to me, because it's easy to think that this difficult thing, whether it's dealing with, a struggle at work, or just in your own mind feeling overwhelmed with the things that life is throwing at you, or thinking that you're doing a worse job than someone else, or thinking that that someone else has more than you, and that would be so much easier if it's easy to think that those things are harder than, or bigger and more impactful than, the good things or the other things. And to me, thinking of life as a string of pearls, I think spoke to me, and going, these good things are just as small, but just as big as the bad things. It's just the next piece of life, and it's all on the backside of us.
Right. And we're stringing the pearls. We're in control.
Yeah.
We're in control of this. I didn't get to hear, I saw it, but I didn't remember as much until you guys bring it up. But everything is the same. Every struggle we go through, we're going to have to deal with it. Let's deal with that subject and let's just move forward. And I'm not going to say anything much about it, but that seems to fall into the maze part. But we'll talk about that whenever
we'll get there.
Get there.
Don't you worry.
But I like that. I like it.
Yeah, and I do feel like it is good to remember that everyone's got their own string of pearls. I almost had to imagine it as a necklace that I picture every human being wearing, and everyone's got their own set of pearls with some real bad stuff, some real great stuff, some in-between stuff. And we all wear our pearls, and we all have to wear them to the best of our ability, and just put the next pearl on the string and do your best. And you don't need to compare your string of pearls to someone else's string of pearls.
Right.
We've all got the same pearl necklace on.
Everything's the same size. But the one thing that Stutz said too was, no pearl is completely pure either.
Right.
All pearls have a little turd in it.
That was such a funny thing to me. The turd.
Yeah. And but then Jonah also kind of added something that was kind of profound in my mind too, that he said, my string of pearls a lot of times feels like a turd with a little pearl in the middle of it. But like, even the bad things, even the whatever, then you also looking for the piece in there that is a silver lining, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great too. Even if it's, well, I learned a little bit of patience in this, or I learned that I can handle more than I thought I could. Those are silver linings. And if you can find those things, that's part of working on your life force, because it's part of working on your own relationship with yourself and potentially with other people. It all kind of goes back on itself, and thinking, hey, guess what, part X, you're not the only thing in this pearl. There's also some of the good in it. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Yep.
I have a question that I don't know if it should be recorded or if you can just cut it out.
Yep.
My question is, like, if someone is listening to this, I'm just thinking about our group at work where we are like the diversity and inclusion group. And I've heard people of color speak and kind of say, like, my struggle is not the same as like a white person's struggle. So I'm a little concerned that if anyone's listening, that they might take offense to like saying everyone's string of pearls are the same. So my worry is like, I want to be careful. And I just don't know if if there's a statement that we should say.
No statement need to be said.
Okay.
Because if you look at it the way I look at things, it don't freaking matter. Because if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt. Our struggles as far as being Black people, they can say back in the day, maybe we had bigger problems, but we overcome a lot of that stuff. Now, if you look at today, we all still got to say, like I was saying, I don't really care about a lot of things about that no more because my major problem now is what about my banknotes or my job or this or that? Those are the things.
Yeah.
Black people seem sometimes, and they might be mad at me when I say this, kind of go overhill sometimes with this talk and stuff. If they want to be creative, if we as Black people want to be equal to everybody, then we should be equal.
Well, I think the
that's a whole different ballgame. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think for the sake of this conversation, it's important to understand that everyone's wearing a string of pearls.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we don't get the right to put we're not here to compare the weight of those pearls. They're all there.
Yeah.
Everyone's got them, whether or not it's
no matter what the causes are of the turd on certain pearls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of what I mean.
No, I appreciate that for sure. And I think that it's worth saying that, look, we're not here to compare that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when we talk about childhood traumas or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, might have dealt with something that comparatively is significantly worse in your childhood than I did, but the same parts of the brain and the psyche and the emotional trauma and stuff can trigger in a person whether they were, I don't know, severely abused versus, emotionally neglected.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of things can trigger the same responses in a person.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get to compare each other's shit. So just with the understanding that we're all wearing a string of pearls, it's not comparing those strings of pearls or saying that everyone's are necessarily dealing with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we do have them. We are wearing them.
Right.
And that's our own journey to go on.
Yeah, that's my whole point. I'm not trying to say I'm some type of person against any race. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. A therapist don't supposed to see anybody in color anyway. They're supposed to help the situation. So whether you've been traumatized because of color, that's an issue. Somebody else been traumatized because of their teeth are too small, that's an issue. But that's just them. I mean, what the heck? Let me help you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At this part in the doc, they get into the shadow, which we already kind of got into. That's the piece that we can't lose, that we want to hide from the rest of the world. Do you guys feel we need to get into that anymore? Or do we move on to the snapshot?
I think we move on to the snapshot.
All right.
Yep.
The snapshot, your realm of illusion, the quote, perfect experience in life that is created by Part X. I don't know that we have to spend as much time on this one, but I do think it's important to touch on it because this snapshot is something that, in my opinion, can very easily stop progress as a person, because you are constantly thinking that if I get this job, if I get this money, if I'm with this person, if I, get this or that or the other thing or whatever it may be, then I'll be happy. When I get there, then I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's something that is so hard not to fall into. I know I struggle with it.
Same. That's why I visit Barnes & Noble bookstore, because I think that happiness is in the next book that I buy.
Right. And sometimes it comes very close, at least
It does
during
come very close sometimes.
But the thing is you can become very crippled when you're not living up to this snapshot, this perfect snapshot of your own life. And even if, and this is what Jonah Hill spoke to, even if you get to that next thing, it doesn't cure anything. It's just how depression starts setting in, because you're going, I got here, I got the job, I got the money, I got the trophy wife, which I do, by the way. And you almost didn't catch that.
I was actually looking at my notes, but yes, trophy wife status.
Yeah. But those aren't that's an unhealthy way to try, to not be living in the moment and all that. So we don't need. Do you guys have anything about Snapshot that you want to add?
Yeah. Well,
you go ahead. I don't have anything actually. This one was my most minimal.
Snapshot. That's just what it is. It's a snapshot.
It's
an illusion taken from reality that does nothing and has no mood, has nothing to it. So the best thing is to deal with reality and move forward. I guess that's kind of what I got out of that snapshot. Like I said, it's just a picture. That's all it is. It's not reality.
Yep.
So it was, like you said, short.
Yep. So the next piece, and James already kind of touched on it, and we actually sort of, I think, inadvertently started talking about it there in a minute, is the maze and the endless quest for fairness involving other people, and a way that we can sometimes get trapped waiting for people to make up for things that they may have done wrong to you or to some sort of unfairness, thinking that I'll be able to move past this once the other person moves past it. And God, that's a hard one not to fall into for me. I'm not always the greatest at, I don't want to say the forgiveness part, because he even says you don't have to forgive them or forget about it, but it's understanding that this is not where I want to be stuck, and the only way to get past the maze is the active love tool that he spoke about. Imagine a world dense with loving energy that you can soak up and send towards the person you're angry at. Hold nothing back. Give them all the love in your mind and in your spirit. This is not forgiveness. It's not even for the other person. It's to free yourself from the crippling maze and allow you to move forward without them. That was pretty. James, are you worshiping right now?
I'm like, I'm trying to go there. I'm trying to go that love, get all in the world.
He's getting all.
I'm pulling it all in. I'm thinking about the ex-wife. It's not working.
Send her that love, but don't.
Send her the love, but it still ain't working.
It's for you, not her.
Oh, it's for me?
Yep.
I send her loves of hammers.
Love and hammers.
Hammering the love in.
Hammer time.
So we have had the Hulk that mentioned, Wanda.
Yeah, it's sending.
And now we're talking about Thor.
Ooh,
the
hammer.
Hammers.
The hammer.
Throw the hammer. It always comes back.
It always comes back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that maze thing is interesting, though.
Yeah.
That is something.
I think it's a hard concept to grasp. I definitely like justice.
Yeah.
And moving past something, not getting possibly an apology or closure from somebody.
Yeah.
is a really tough thing. It's something I've spent my whole life trying to master. Even if it was someone I got an apology for, but from, it's still hard to imagine getting out of that maze without feeling like that person made it right or was a changed person or without full forgiveness.
Or knowing how bad they hurt you, maybe, too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, what do you want me to do with that? So it kind of feels like you get stuck in a maze of kind of hurt that was like you caused that. And then that's where these tools come into place because it is yours.
Yeah.
It is mine to deal with.
Right.
And to be my best person with. So this one was a hard one for me.
Yeah.
The topic of it was, it's hard.
Yeah, to be truthful, I'm kind of with y'all guys on that too. You know, I learned a long time ago to let things go, but I let things go jokingly in order to relieve it, because otherwise it will just stay with me.
Jokingly, like you lean to like humor.
I lean to humor on it, because I know I was one of those people. If you did wrong, you were on the list.
Yeah.
And that list stayed for a long time.
Right.
In fact, I wouldn't talk to you for a while.
Yeah.
You know, I learned all that stuff, but I learned it now. I'm just not the same person, because I'm older now and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't got time now to waste on what you want to get apology from you, because I was taught a while ago by a therapist person. If I'm sitting there waiting for you to apologize to me and I'm upset about it, in the meantime, you're watching TV, going to movies, driving your car, you're having a gay old time. I'm the only one suffering out of this whole thing. Why should I be like that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I picked up. So I just let it go.
You know, I think
most of the time.
I think something that is hard for me to stomach about this one is, I think, is understanding or imagining the other person thinking that everything's okay.
Right.
In my world. I think it's if somebody does something or responds to something or behaves in a certain way and it directly hurts me, my fear is that if I just go about my life, if I forgive them or don't, but don't continue to almost outwardly show that I'm angry at you, then you're going to think everything's fine.
Right.
And I'm also probably afraid that I'm going to kind of forget about it because I don't want to forget sometimes. I want to be mad.
Wow.
I don't want to forget that I don't want to, because I know it doesn't do me any good. But in the moment, it's like, I don't want to forget why I was mad at you. Because then you
want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
It's like an animal in the wild that they remember, the antelope remembers that the tiger always comes after them. So you want to just hold on to that. And our brains, it is a protective mechanism. Our brains do that to protect us. It's not necessarily something we even, I think, consciously do, but we do want to remember what happened so that it stays relevant and that person doesn't think they got away with it, because there again comes the justice. It's
you saying got away with it is like, it made my stomach turn, because that's what it feels like. You got away with it.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to feel some pain because you made me feel pain. I don't like that, but man, that probably was a tough one for me. The maze is a sticky maze for sure.
And I know they didn't touch much on forgiveness in this show, but on the topic of the maze is, I'm a fan of Oprah Winfrey. Everyone's got their own views, but I love listening to her and her podcast as well. And one thing she said forgiveness is accepting that the other person may never change. And it was really big the more I repeated that to myself. So I thought about that the minute they talked about the maze in this documentary. So there's just a little tidbit that I'm just
understanding that
now.
The other person will never change.
Forgiveness is accepting. It's that like acceptance that person may never change. And that's when real forgiveness is possible.
It makes me wonder. It does make sense, but it also makes me wonder if I've ever truly forgiven someone.
Yes.
Because it's hard for me to accept that somebody just cannot and will not ever be even capable of being a better person or a different person.
When they repeat that same thing they done before, it seems to go back in your memory where it sits back there and it just pulls it right back into your mind, like, oh, they ain't changed. But then again, let me put it this way to you guys. If if you hold something in your, because I don't know how many people told me this, men, women, a lot of people, that if you hold something like that against somebody, the next person that comes along in your life does something remotely like that, then you're going to hold it against them just as much.
Right.
Make them
That's
pay.
why it's easy to, that's why we should try to, like you said, say in your mind that they're not going to change. That way you can relieve yourself from that and say, well, you know, they ain't going to change, whatever. And you can just kind of go on. And just don't take it with you. And it's easier said than done, trust me.
Sure, yeah.
Don't take it with you, because that next person should not suffer because of that person previous.
That's so true.
That's how
God, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Of making other people pay for something that someone else did.
Right.
There's a big time in my life where, because of the way somebody treated me, it made me not be willing to accept a lot of things.
Right.
And that's, you know, thankfully in some ways that got better. All right. So after the maze, he brought up active love. No, we already talked about active love. He brought up radical acceptance. This was understanding that every single event has something in it you can learn from. We sort of spoke to that a little in the String of Pearls piece, so we don't need to get too far into that. But basically creating a reflex that allows you to, as he put it, squeeze the juice out of each thing that happens and figure out what you're going to do about it rather than just being stuck. Remembering that there's always sun on the other side of the clouds.
Ooh, I loved that.
I did too.
Yeah, me too. When he started talking about when his dad took him in the airplane, and as a kid, and understanding as a kid, you don't really have a concept of how large things are, and kind of seeing 3 feet in front of your face as opposed to remembering what the you know, zoom out and know what the big picture is. And you know, you're in that haze of clouds, and then you finally break through and there's the sun on the other side of all that shit that was down below. And part X, he says, creates those clouds, and it's easy to forget how to see through them.
Yeah, which is, again, it's a lot like depression, where when he's talking about that when you're in the throes of a depressing time in your life, it feels like the sun no longer exists because it's a really cloudy time or cloudy day, cloudy month, whatever it might be. But the sun does still exist. You might just not be able to see it.
Right.
And I just love how he talked about the airplane and getting above the clouds. And that's where the sun was.
Yep.
Right.
And his point was the only way to try to break through those clouds. So to go back to a tool, right? So when you're in those clouds, how do you break through them? He talked about the grateful flow.
The grateful flow.
The grateful flow is sort of what we did at the beginning. I was sort of joking a little bit, but he had, you know, Jonah close his eyes and start naming things that he was grateful for. You guys want to do that real quick?
Yes.
Okay.
I like a good gratefulness practice.
Let's do it. All right. Close your eyes. Focus on the things you're grateful for. Small things. Doesn't have to be big. Bird, go ahead and say one.
I'm grateful for this very soft, comfy blanket on my lap.
James?
I am grateful for speech.
I'm grateful for my cat, how soft she is. So the grateful flow, then, if I understood it right, it's we do that a few times, and then right before we get to the next one, when we're feeling that feeling of gratefulness, we cut it off and we just let the feeling go, not necessarily focus it on a certain thing. And that energy is what we can use to break through those clouds.
Oh,
I agree with that.
That makes sense.
Even that feeling I felt just now after saying one, And I look over at James and I'm ready to say 10 more because I had 10 more on my brain easily of things that I was thankful for.
Yep.
Yep. And that
And then it just got caught up in my throat because I couldn't say anymore. You asked us for one and I'm going, I got so much more to say. So then it's a good feeling.
But then if you have to stop it.
Yeah.
And then you let that feeling go. It is kind of a soft feeling, isn't it?
It feels good.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to maybe have a FaceTime every night, you know, the three of us, and we're going to say what we're grateful for before we go night-night.
Right.
But night-night.
And I used to say that all the time. Tell God, when I speak to him the nights, how, you know, I'm just thankful for the little things. Because, you know, when some people pray, they always asking God for everything.
Yeah.
Give me that, give me that, help me with this, do this, help me. Does anybody ever stop to think, to say, thank you? Thank you for that I'm able to see. Thank you for I'm able to walk, talk.
Yeah.
Do this the basic thing. Because where we worked at, Jeff, we seen people that couldn't do the basics.
Right.
You know, and it's a blessing in itself to be able to just do that. You know, that's why I'm so thankful.
I think it helped me just doing that right now, like, because it felt nice to try to find the smaller things to be grateful for too. It's really easy, you know, as a kid when you're writing, you know, during Thanksgiving in November, that you're writing like, what do you think? Well, I'm thankful for my family, and I'm thankful for, you know, or my job, or that I have a house. And like, yeah, of course, those are things that I'm very, very grateful for. But if you can try to bring it down to a level, like I said, not just my cat, but how soft she is, right? Focus on something small, like that I have clean socks upstairs. I don't, by the way. I need to do laundry. But, you know, that we have drinkable water in our house.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's cold.
I said the soft, warm blanket on my lap because when I was a very broke single mom years ago, I mean, I had one blanket that was my one favorite blanket on the couch, but it was one. And this blanket on my lap is my favorite blanket, but I have 10 more upstairs to choose from. And I'm grateful for that because I didn't have options before. I had one. And it just feels humbling to be so grateful for this that used to be difficult for me to come by.
Yeah. And understanding that maybe not everybody has that.
Yeah.
I got 3.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a tangent, but that tangent felt good. So before we kind of get into our takeaways, and I know that we've already kind of done some of that, the last piece that I wrote down about his tools was the loss processing tool. The way he spoke was the potency of non-attachment. Being stuck because you're so afraid of losing things, I think, is something that that one was a little bit harder for me to chew on, only because there are certain things in the world that I just do not feel like I would be able to move on if I lost them, specifically people. And it's hard to try to wrap my brain around the idea that you're moving to try to move toward an understanding that my life force, my self, my being doesn't stop with this person or with this thing. None of the things that I can't live with, that I feel like I can't live without, are things. They're all people. But in reality, if I zoom out, life goes on, whether I'm here, whether or not we're here, everything continues. But this was the one that I probably related to the least, just because I don't know that I'm ready to to accept that. Can I attempt to move toward that in a hope that I can, be a happier person? But I sort of maybe disagree just a little bit that I'm not an unhappy person, that I'm probably a happier person, because there are people in my life that I at this point I feel like I can't live without. And in reality, of course, physically my life would continue, but God, I feel like I would be a different person and not a good way. You know, so I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add to that. I know that's a little bit of a heavy one to maybe get into toward the end of our show, but that is the order that they did it in the doc, and that's what we're following.
Yeah.
So
my only thought is I did appreciate in the documentary, he does say that it's more of just a practice. He did kind of give a disclaimer that they both said to each other, even in the documentary, I don't want to lose you.
Yeah,
and they both told each other that I love you.
Then they offered to get married to each other, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. Yep. There was a marriage talk there for a second. But I think that it just being a practice for every so often, just reminding yourself that your life force exists no matter what you lose.
Yeah.
I could lose everything. I could lose my home. I could lose my car, but I'm still here and I still have control over my body and my decisions and my life force, I guess, to use their words.
Right.
But that I do think that those are fleeting practices.
Yeah.
I don't connect with that one amazingly well either because I don't deal with loss well, period. But as a practice, just keeping in mind that my life force is
something to at least look toward, whether or not I'm willing to walk that direction or making steps to walk that direction.
Yeah.
Because it also feels like unattachment could be a very bad thing. I lived a portion of my life where I was unwilling to really get attached to anything or anyone and let myself attach to that, you know, and there is some freedom in that, I'll admit, but it's not a good feeling overall, you know? So anyway.
And then the bird flew into his life.
And then there she is.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll go myself. I'm good at loss. I'm way better at loss than I am. You know, I put it. It's not something common. I don't cry for a lot of things that normal people cry for, like death in the family. No matter who in my family dies,
James.
I usually don't.
James.
I'm talking about, except for my dog.
Okay, thank you.
My dog. My dog, I didn't think I was going to cry for my dog when she died, but sitting there looking at her as she passed away, I couldn't help but feel a momentary like sadness, a tear come down my eye.
You dogs are better than people, so that's why.
Every day meet you, every day run up on you, every day, you know, that stuff. Yeah. And that's probably sometimes why I used to be like Jeff said, you do get some type of positive thing and keeping distance from people.
Yeah.
Because you keep that distance from them, if something was to happen, you won't feel as helpless as something as you would if you were very close to them.
Right. And James, I think as you were saying that, and if you don't want this in, please tell me, but there was some things that Stutz was talking about in the way that he himself throughout this started to feel a little bit different and started to gain some things from his relationship with Jonah Hill. And what he admitted was when he was trying to be vulnerable, he was having to stifle jokes. He was having to, his defense mechanism was humor. And you sort of mentioned that a little bit, just, you know, probably half an hour ago or something now, but that maybe you do default to humor sometimes. And I will admit, like, I do that too, but knowing you and I'm not going to tell the world your stories that you're not telling, but knowing some of the things that you've gone through in your life and the fact that you can still be so kind of jolly of a person, I think is commendable. But I also wonder, do you feel like some of that is a defense mechanism? Do you use humor as a defense against potentially being vulnerable?
I don't know if it is. It's like involuntary now.
Sure.
You know, before it used to be a cover up, but now I don't really need it as much because now I'm freer than I was before. But humor is the great thing. Like if we like today, if something got super serious, I would almost smile.
Yeah.
That smile is not a smile to say I'm happy. It's a smile of overwhelming sense of emotions being held in check. Is what that is. So I hold that emotions in check through a smile.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But if I get upset, you'll know. You know, if I get happy, you'll know. You probably won't hardly ever see me sad. That part I could cover up pretty well.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for all my life.
Yep.
You know, since I was a kid, I've been covering up that. And that is my protection mode.
Yep.
You know, and I still do that today.
Yeah.
That is something I probably won't lose.
Yeah. And I don't think you need to. I think it's okay to have defense mechanisms. It's okay to, especially because and I'm not a therapist, but also
go ahead, Jeff.
If you're gonna have a defense mechanism, humor and lightheartedness, even if it yeah, we probably need to be a little better sometimes about really tackling some of the things that come our way and not just writing it off as a joke or funny, but it's better than some defense mechanisms because laughter is healing.
Right.
Laughter and lightheartedness can relieve some of that tension. I mean,
and love heals.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you all can't see James right now. You can only hear him, but he is a loving, loving dude.
Yeah.
So if that is a defense mechanism, we ain't trying to lose it.
Nope. Nope. Keep that one. How did we feel after watching this? When credits rolled, what was your first emotional reaction?
Mine is, I'm gonna try some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna try some of this. And the major one I'm gonna try is that shadow one. I love that shadow one. That's because I'm just gonna try it. I'm gonna see what's gonna happen. I got this person I want to try to chat it up with, like the guy, the therapist said before.
A lady?
Yeah, before he was the worst.
Oh boy,
calm down. First, he was the worst at this. I'd been wanting somebody, but he's a lot better than he was before. But he's not the greatest. Me and him can relate on that.
Sure,
I'm pretty good. I could talk to anybody, but if I really wanted to talk to a Pacific woman, I fall all back to that stage where I get dumbfounded and everything else.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try this and just relieve that. And if they don't like it, then okay. Oh well.
Yeah.
At least I'm free.
Yeah.
You know, I'll talk to the shadow, say, come on, boy, let's roll. And now
because I can't get rid of you.
Put him in the passenger seat. As long as he knows he's a passenger. He's not the driver.
Yeah.
But there you go. I like that.
Nice.
I pointed my finger like I was being a very controlling mother just now.
Yeah.
That's how I do it too, with the kids.
Even though here's the thing. James's kids are older than us.
Yes.
Sure.
So it actually makes no sense for me to order James around because I am not the senior here.
You know what? Wisdom can always order any age.
Mic drop. Please don't drop those. Those were expensive. Yeah. How about you, Bird? How did you, when credits roll, your first thought?
If I gave it a word, it would be inspired.
Oh, wow.
I just felt like I always need help feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
So watching this made me feel hopeful and it made me feel very validated because I too went to school for psychology. Yep. I do not have my degree yet. Have a few classes left to finish and
you'll get there.
School's hard.
School sucks.
So I definitely connected and felt very validated to this therapy style. Mm-hmm. It's everything I saw in myself wanting to do as a therapist, and it's what made me lose my joy for finishing that degree because I didn't seem like that's how any therapist worked, and this was eye-opening to see. So I felt inspired on a couple different levels.
What'd you do?
Possibly professionally. and to use the tools myself in my own personal life.
Well, you already told me this, but what did you do as soon as you finished watching this? What did you do? Answer that.
I mean, I instantly had to Google and read about Dr. Phil Stutz and bought both of the books from Amazon.com.
Yeah, and you, Dr. Phil Stutz, because we all know you're listening to this, you gained yourself a couple fans here today.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so we watched Stutz, and in true Talkumentary form, we do need to rate it in our official Talkumentary rating style, which means each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, with 1 being an absolute piece of horse shit and 10 being on par with one of the best documentaries we've ever seen. The item we chose for this week was blonde wigs. We didn't spend much time on this part of the documentary, but there was a kind of fun little twist in the documentary where toward the beginning it did feel a little bit stale, and then Jonah takes off a blonde wig and reveals that he was trying too hard to make this thing perfect, and he understood that vulnerability was the right way to make this. So he pulled back all the green screens and the wigs and things like that, which I thought was a really neat part of the doc that we didn't really get into because the other stuff was more important. Yeah.
Oh, I especially would love to have a room like that bedroom with the live ocean just on the back wall.
Yeah.
Man, I would love that.
I walked into the room when Niki was watching the doc and that part came on and she's like, oh, it's my life. Like same. That's what I think about when I close my eyes. Yep. She's very much an ocean lady.
Yes.
Here.
I'm just
you're an ocean lady
dweller right now, but I'm actually a mermaid at heart.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so like I said, the item we chose was blonde wigs. Bird, being our special guest for today, why don't you tell us what you rated Stutz?
I rated Stutz a 10 out of 10 blonde wigs.
This was
I freaking loved it.
Yeah, so this, in your opinion of the documentaries you've watched, this is one of, if not the best that you've watched.
The most impactful, which is something I'm passionate about, is mental health and people feeling better, and hopefully for generations to come. And I think that this very well could be something that helps lead that. So agreed. 10 out of 10 blonde wigs, actually maybe 11 out of 10. So there you go. You heard it from me, Jonah Hill.
There you go. Jonah, send us some money so we can renovate our basement. I'm just kidding. All right, James, what do you think? How many blonde wigs for you, sir?
I gave 8 blonde wigs.
8 blonde wigs.
Yep, I gave 8.
No, you didn't.
Well, I didn't. Was it 7 or 8?
Yeah.
I gave 7.
You gave 7.
Sorry about that.
You can change it to 8.
Just put an 8 because
we're gonna change it to 8, buddy.
We'll make it 8 because what Niki said was like right on point. You know what this guy and how he operate and how between him and his client moved in and out. It was very, very good. And it also had me, like I said, I could use some of this stuff. I can use some of the things that he just talked about. In fact, when we get done with this, I'm going to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
And write down some of this stuff. 'Cause I didn't write down all of it, but I have enough paper. Maybe some therapists need to be writing this down too, for they can use it for themselves. You know,
for real.
You know, but it was good. It was very good. I liked it. You know, I liked the surprise of it.
Yep.
And the next one, we'll see what that comes for us. But right now, he gets 8.
Before we started, or toward the beginning of our show, I did also mention that this was one of the few that I would visit again as well, which is not what I can say about some of the other ones. Although with most documentaries, I do very much enjoy them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this show. But most of them, once I've seen them, I don't really care to go back to. This one had real things. It was almost like having a well-made visual textbook, or not even a textbook, a like inspirational journal, or God, I don't know that I'm using the right words, but something that visually you can go back and revisit again and again. So I'm going to do, as a tool. I'm going to do something that James just did. After talking about this with you two, I like it better than I did when we started doing this. So I also upped mine to 8, which means that with a 10, an 8, and an 8, our score is 8.66 repeating. So it's a lot of 6s. Sorry about that, James. I know how you feel about those repeating 6s, but 8.666666 blonde wigs
that's
for Stutz and the official documentary rating. I want to thank my friends, my family who's here with me, my crew, our listeners for coming and hanging out with us this week and diving into yet another documentary. As always, I love hanging out with you guys. Bird, I love living with you, and I just love you.
I love you too.
And I will be using each and every one of you in my grateful flow for, the next however long I continue to do that.
Ditto.
Let's talk about next week's episode. For next week, the crew is going to be opening ourselves up to a little paranormal spookiness with a 2021. Go ahead, James. Do the. There it is. That's creepy. 2021 documentary called The Sleepless Unrest: The Real Conjuring Home. We'll watch a group of filmmakers move into the world-famous haunted house and attempt to collect evidence of paranormal activity. Have either of you guys seen The Sleepless Unrest?
Nope.
I have not. You plan on watching it?
Nope. I am not. No, I'm just kidding.
For myself, I'm
going to check it out if it's what I'm supposed to check out.
If I watch it, there will be a Disney movie after.
Directly after. I don't put a lot of faith or any faith in the paranormal, so I'm not expecting to be blown away by this documentary. I'm a skeptic at heart, especially when it comes to the paranormal. It's hard for me to believe things like that, even when there's kind of quote unquote proof, because I start looking at that and I'm like, I don't really think that. But I do. Go ahead.
And for me, it would be more reality for me, because I have seen devils or demons getting possess people and getting them removed from them.
Yeah.
What are
exorcisms?
Exorcism.
Yeah.
I've seen real live exorcisms. And I've seen one pass out and go into another person.
Wow.
And then take them out. So it's
hopefully,
real.
Hopefully the documentary lives up to what we're hoping. I do find it fun. Spookiness is kind of fun, even though I don't believe in most of it. So everyone, go out, check out the documentary, The Sleepless Unrest: The Real Conjuring Home, before next week's episode. It can be streamed on Amazon Prime. Next week, let's see, Molly, Bryce, and we have a special guest joining us all the way from Rhode Island via the telephone for next week. So we are going to grab our flashlights, our EMF meters, our low-quality night vision cameras, and a whole bunch of Mountain Dew in an attempt to prove the existence of ghosts and ghoulies, one documentary at a time. If you want to connect with the documentary crew, look for us at Talkumentary Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Or you can shoot us an email, like I said before, at info.talkumentary@gmail.com. On behalf of DJ, who's in the post-production booth, King James, my lovely Bird, and the entire Talkumentary family, I'm your host, Jeff Kolaski, and I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you keep your minds open and be kind to each other, and keep your grateful flow flowing. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Peace be still.
Peace be still.
What's up, Stutz?
Hi, Jonah. Okay, entertain me.